You can go ahead.
Ons het almal medelee met die geliefdes van die gesneuvelde soldate. Die feit van die saak is, dit gaan hulle nie lewend maak nie. Why did it happen what happened in the DRC? We have two defense reviews, one in 1998 and one in 2015. The result of the 1998 defense review was that we bought some of the most sophisticated armaments in the world. The Gripens, our submarines, it has cost the taxpayers of South African billions of rands. In the defense review of 2015, where the review in itself has cost a couple of millions to compile, certain recommendations were made, but no attention is properly given to those recommendations. What happened with our most sophisticated armaments? They are dilapidated in a certain sense because there's not enough money to ensure that there is proper maintenance. And therefore, yes, it is true, we can participate in peace missions in Africa. But then we must be sure that we are equipped and properly prepared to do that. That our soldiers are well trained and that they have the necessary support. Now, this is not the first time that we're in a situation like we have at this moment. In 2013, we had the Bangui situation in the Central African Republic, where we've lost 15 soldiers. Now, everyone in the military knows that after such an incident, there is proper re-evaluation on what is or what went wrong and what must be done to ensure that we don't have a repeat of what happened. And the DRC is nothing else than a repeat of Bangui. Therefore, we must ask, who must take responsibility? Now, the most disturbing of this whole matter, Honourable Speaker.
Order, Honourable Member, can you take your seat? Honourable Skosana, what is the point of order?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Honourable Speaker. The interpreter of Iske to Isindebele Asikola.
Okay.
And I don't want to start that again because I've been saying this many times, and it looks like we are being undermined. Some of the section of our society is heavily undermined. It's unacceptable, Speaker. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We will attend to that, Honourable Member. Honourable Puneval, you can continue.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. The most disturbing aspect was actually reported in the newspaper of a report by the well-known and accredited journalist Erika Gibson. And what she said is that there were senior generals in the SANDF that actually insisted that the President, as Commander-in-Chief, must be properly informed that we do not have the capabilities to send this mission to DRC. But the top generals prevented them to put forward that information. Now, Honourable Speaker, the Freedom Front Plus asked the President to appoint a judicial commission of inquiry into these allegations. Because if we do not attend to that, then we are in a fortnight of a military coup and the President won't even know it. I thank you.
Thank you. Honourable Trollip.
Madam Speaker, none of us can feign surprise why we are debating the tragic loss of 14 of our soldiers' lives in the eastern DRC. Sitikosapa wabo, akuhlanga lungehlanga. It is clear that we have learnt no lessons from the fateful Battle of Bangui in the Central African Republic, and that perennial budget cuts have emasculated our defence force. In fact, the hollowing out of our defence force began with the corrupt manipulation of arms procurement facilitated by the erstwhile President Zuma and his associates. This not only placed the defence force in a precarious financial position, but it has also continued to constrain its operational effectiveness due to the unaffordable maintenance and lack of capacity to deploy the said armaments. This has been compounded by progressively ineffectual and inexperienced ministerial and military leadership appointments. On the 15th of July, my Action SA colleague Lerato Ngobeni outlined the inevitable consequences of the systematic hollowing out of the SANDF's capabilities in the Defence Committee. These are her notes, and she said, "This department has been severely mismanaged and underfunded for decades, that is placing it at a perilous risk." She went on and warned of the dire consequences of our sovereignty and the lives of our men in uniform. And she said the misalignment of the budget in the deployment to the SADC mission is going to expose our men and women to fierce militant insurgency while being ill-equipped, overstretched, underfunded, and without sufficient combat and intelligence support. She asked the Minister, how many more lives must be sacrificed before this government acknowledges the urgent need to overhaul the state of our armed forces? Minister, you studiously ignored the question because you are clearly out of your depth, and our national security is not only compromised, but our defence force is rudderless. Now, 6 months later, we mourn the deaths of 14 brave soldiers whose decomposing remains have yet to be repatriated, not to mention the absence of any plausible casualty evacuation plans for our wounded. The Deputy Minister General appeared bemused and at times even surprised as he listened to the department's defensive denialism. His silence in the committee when we met as a joint committee exposes why we oppose the existence of deputy ministers. They are impractical, ineffectual, and superfluous. The department's political and military leadership sat in that committee and presented like hapless hares in the spotlight. Our warning has fallen on deaf ears. Our ill-equipped, under-resourced, demoralized, and outgunned soldiers were sent to fight in a war which we have no apparent demonstrable interest, and they were set up to fail and die. I'm proud that in October last year we rejected this government's reckless attempt to throw an additional 2 billion rand at the deployment in the DRC. We refused to support this folly then, and we are even now more determined than ever to demand its end. As confirmed by Minister Mochega in her reply to my parliamentary question, she said the deployment is devoid of strategy, lacks a clear national interest, suffers from inadequate capacitation, and frankly has no defensible reason to continue. Minister Angie Mochega must resign or be fired by the end of the day. Our troops must return before the end of this month.
Order, Honourable Member, your time is up.
Thank you very much.
Honourable Swart.
Speaker, the ACDP would also like to extend its deepest condolences to the families of the 14 brave soldiers who died in the DRC. During last year's defence budget vote, the ACDP warned that we must either ensure that our deployed troops are properly resourced or bring them home. Now, what does properly equipped mean? It means air combat support, Roy Falk helicopters, proper medical facilities, logistical capabilities, radar defence systems, artillery, drones and heavy mortars. These were sadly lacking. Speaker, we all agree that the defence budget is insufficient, and therefore we need to also accept responsibility, because those parties that passed that defence budget must also accept responsibility. We cannot deploy our troops in this more offensive peace enforcement role. This was not peacekeeping. This was an offensive role to neutralize negative forces and armed groups without proper resources. Senior ranking officers warned against this deployment, citing significant operational risks. Their concerns were ignored. They were even reprimanded. This information was not given to President Ramaphosa. Other officers also indicated that there was a lack of planning and said they were killed because of a failure of planning. The troops on the ground stood no chance since they landed in the DRC. This is an absolute scandal. It is scandalous. There was insufficient pre-deployment planning and training to meet this ideologically and technologically more advanced Rwandan-backed M23. Where was the military intelligence? And whilst acknowledging that our troops fought like lions, particularly our special forces, and that the M23 sustained heavy losses, it's becoming clear, abundantly clear, that this was indeed a mission impossible. Our Commander-in-Chief, President Ramaphosa, should hang his head in shame. The Minister of Defense should hang her head in shame. And we, who did not appropriate sufficient budgets for the Defense Force, should also hang our heads in shame. We don't need another debate on this issue. We possibly need a judicial inquiry, but at the very least, we need a full parliamentary oversight inquiry into this humiliating defeat, which has not only cost the lives of our troops, but has severely damaged our reputation and that of the SANDF. The mothers and families of the deceased soldiers demand and deserve nothing less. Lastly, we welcome the immediate